Okay, we're talking about a turning point in American history for the United States after our tie with Great Britain in the War of 1812. Now I'm going to give you 4 reasons why the War of 1812 marked a turning point in American history. Why the War of 1812 marked a turning point in American history. What's a turning point in American history mean? Things change. Things change. Okay? Number 1, the first reason that the War of 1812 marked a turning point in American history was from 1789 to 1850. These events in Europe, including the War of 1812, helped us develop a foreign policy. We really were struggling with the foreign policy since we started this country. But the events that occurred from 1789 through 1850, which included the War of 1812, these events in Europe really helped the United States develop a foreign policy that would be successful. And again, foreign policy is policy and how you deal with foreign countries. So from 1789 to 1815, including the War of 1812, events in Europe helped the United States develop a foreign policy. Number 2, after the War of 1812, the United States became more independent of Europe. After the War of 1812, the United States became more independent of Europe. Okay? After the War of 1812, the United States became more independent of Europe, which we needed to do. The third turning point in American history that the War of 1812 provided was we finally gained respect from European countries that we could, quote, stand on our own feet. Okay? We weren't dependent upon them. So the results of the War of 1812 allowed the United States to gain more respect from European countries that we could, quote, stand on our own 2 feet. So we gained a little bit of stature or respect from European countries saying, hey, this new nation can stand on its own 2 feet. And the fourth reason, which is probably the most important, I want you to think about this, during the next 100 years, or almost 100 years, the United States was not directly involved in what? Any European wars. Yep, that was crucial. So for nearly 100 years, the United States is not going to be directly involved in any European affairs or wars. Excuse me, wars. Now I want you to think about that. If we have developed a foreign policy, we become more independent of Europe, we've gained respect from Europe, and we're not in any wars or conflicts with Europe, what are we going to spend our time doing the next 100 years? Concentrating on what? The United States of America. Okay? We are going to spend more time concentrating on developing our own country rather than dealing with foreign countries around the globe. You think about it. Thus far, we spent our whole history dealing with foreign issues. Well, after the War of 1812, the United States of America began to concentrate on developing our own country rather than dealing with foreign countries and their issues. Which leads us right into the next subtopic, which is the Industrial Revolution in the United States. The Industrial Revolution. We are going to focus on ourselves and developing our own country rather than focusing on foreign countries. And the first example of this is going to be the Industrial Revolution in the United States. Anybody know what is the Industrial Revolution?
It's very cool.
They look like they know. What is it? What do you think it is?
We started industrializing our country.
Like how do we do that?
Factories.
That, very good. Where'd you learn that?
Science.
Very good. The shift went from factories and machines using mass production. Okay? So, the Industrial Revolution simply was the shift to factories and machines and using mass production in the United States. Mass production becomes very important. So, the Industrial Revolution is the shift to factories and machines using mass production. Now, one of the first inventors who became kind of a pioneer of the Industrial Revolution was Samuel Slater. Samuel Slater was one of the first inventors and one of the first men who became a pioneer of the Industrial Revolution. Okay, Samuel Slater. He was also a very skilled worker. Now, he was from Great Britain. He was a highly skilled mechanic and had a lot of experience in the cotton textile mill by the time he was just 21. So Samuel Slater was from Great Britain. He was a highly skilled mechanic, and he had a lot of experience in a cotton textile mill by the time he was 21. So what is Slater from Great Britain, who was a highly skilled mechanic and had experience in a cotton textile mill by the time he was 21, what does he have knowledge of that we don't in America? Okay, these spinning and weaving machines, these new spinning and weaving machines. And who invented those originally? People from Britain. Okay, we didn't have that in America. So Slater was very knowledgeable about these new spinning and weaving machines that were originally designed and built by British inventors. So what do you think Britain did concerning people like Samuel Slater that wanted to come to America? Wouldn't let him, yeah. They actually wanted to keep their machines a secret from the rest of the world, so Parliament passed laws that forbid workers from leaving the country. Okay, so Samuel Slater wants to bring his knowledge to the United States, but the British government doesn't want their secret out, and so they pass laws that forbid their workers to leave the country. Guess what Slater did? Snuck out. He snuck out of the country. And he arrived in New York in 1789 and then eventually moved to Rhode Island. So he snuck out of the country, arrived in New York in 1789, and then moved to Rhode Island. What's he going to need to get his ideas off the ground in America? Funding. Very good, Talon. And what he does is he gets financial help from a Quaker merchant by the name of Moses Brown. So Slater comes to the United States and needs some financial backing. He needs some money to get his ideas going in the United States. And so what he does is he receives financial help from a Quaker merchant by the name of Moses Brown. Well, what did he do when he got Brown's financial support? He reproduced these spinning and weaving machines used in England and introduced them to the United States. So with the financial backing of Moses Brown, Slater was able to reproduce the spinning and weaving machines that were used in England and introduce those to America. Now, when he reproduced the spinning and weaving machines, what did he use to power those machines, which was new?
Water.
Water. Very good, water. So when he reproduced these spinning and weaving machines, Slater used water power. So where would most of these mills operate if they used water power in the United States, probably? Yeah, New England states and the Middle Atlantic states. Right in this area, basically in here. Okay, because there's water here, but this was the industrial area. So these machines were used mainly in the New England states and the Middle Atlantic states. Now, Slater coming over and making it possible to produce yarn and cloth with these mills led to the establishment of what we know as the factory system. So Samuel Slater helped start the factory system in the United States with his reproduction of these spinning and weaving machines and the fact that he used water power to do it. So the ability of the mill to produce both yarn and cloth would establish the factory system in the United States. Now, we know we run machinery by water. What else was our next invention that we ran machines by? Very good, steam. And in 1769, it was a fellow by the name of James Watt, who was actually a Scottish inventor, that patented the first steam machine. Okay, 1769, a Scotsman by the name of James Watt patented the first steam machine. Well, the United States was a little behind the 8 ball. They became aware of the steam machine and how it worked in the 1790s. But by 1812, there were 10 steam-powered mills in the United States. So because of the innovation of James Watt, a Scottish inventor, the United States became aware of the steam engine in the 1790s. And by 1812, there were actually 10 steam-powered mills in the United States. So that's the industrial introduction to the Industrial Revolution. Okay? That's kind of where it started. Now, that'll take us to our next subtopic, which is the concept of interchangeable parts. Okay, that's pretty big. The concept of interchangeable parts. And who was the first man to come up with that idea? Eli Whitney. Now, you know what he built with this interchangeable parts? What? No, most people think that. Guns. Okay? So the man who came up with the new idea for building machines was Eli Whitney, and in 1798, he decided to try and manufacture guns using interchangeable parts. In 1798, Eli Whitney decided to try and manufacture guns using interchangeable parts. Now what he did is he wrote to the Secretary of the Treasury and he requested a contract. And the contract was to make guns with interchangeable parts. Do you think that our country would be interested in that?
Yeah.
Sure they would. But he writes to the Secretary of Treasury because what's he need? Money. And he wants a contract to go ahead and make guns for the United States with interchangeable parts. And he received the contract and started to produce, make an effort to produce them. Okay? So he has the concept of interchangeable parts in guns. He writes to the Secretary of the Treasury and asks for a contract to make them for the United States, and he receives the contract. Well, here's what he did. It took him 2 years to perfect this process. 2 years. And in 1800, he traveled to Washington, D.C. to meet with government officials to show off his new product. So it took him 2 years to get this put together, and in 1800, Eli Whitney goes to Washington, D.C. to meet with government officials to show off his product. Okay, so he's proved his point. So what do you do? What do you do, Mackenzie? So he shows up, and what's he do? What picture in your mind? What does he do?
Take apart.
What's he do? Takes what apart? Okay. So he takes it apart and puts it back together? Okay, what do you say, Kyle?
Probably just changed it like.
I'm still trying to follow that, but what do you think? Cal, you're a gun man, aren't you? Took it, so he brought it in, assembled, and put it together for a minute, or took it apart, put it back together. Okay?
Yeah.
I think he shot the different guns.
He demonstrated.
Get closer.
He demonstrated it, yeah.
He brought in parts from 10 guns and spread the parts on the table. And he put them together one by one until he had all 10 assembled. So he brought in a box of gun parts, basically, dumped them on the table, scattered them out, and started putting these guns together one by one until he had 10 assembled. And they were really impressed, right? They were. But what did they want to know? Did they fire? So after he assembled all 10 guns, he then fired all 10 guns. And as soon as the government officials witnessed that, mass production in the United States began. It's kind of an interesting concept. So I think the same thing. He took one gun in and took it apart, put it back together. He actually dumped parts from 10 guns on the table, put them together one by one, and fired them. And he said, yeah, you're the man. Okay, let's talk about the benefits of the Industrial Revolution. And I'm going to give you 6 things that the Industrial Revolution accomplished in the United States. Now, I want you to think about this. Now, Soraya, you're back there and you're thinking it up, brilliant young lady. Tell me one thing that you think the Industrial Revolution accomplished in the United States. What's one thing it might have done? Now think about, kind of outside the box. You might say, oh, it helped us make more things. Okay, that's get outside the box. What? What's that?
Did it help give more jobs?
Ha! The Industrial Revolution created more jobs, which strengthened the country. Got more jobs, you got a stronger country. Very good, Will. The thrill is coming on fire this week. Nick, you had something to say? No?
To lower the price of goods because they do more.
Close. I'll give you a close on that. If you have mass production, what are you going to have less of?
The demand.
Okay? So, if I'm going to go out, buy me 10 acres, I'm going to fence those 10 acres. If I go out there with the shovel, and I start digging 100 fence posts, it's going to take me a long time to get that. So what am I going to go get? Post hole, automatic post hole driller or backhoe, depending. Well, what happened is it required, the Industrial Revolution required less manual labor, which resulted in more what? Production. Okay? It's just compared to me digging 10 fence post holes myself, or go get one of those things that goes, okay? So, the Industrial Revolution required less manual labor, which resulted in more production. Now, if you have more production, what are you going to become? Yeah. It transformed the United States into one of the wealthiest nations in the world. There's number 3. They're not in any specific order. I've given you 3, though. It transformed the United States into one of the wealthiest countries in the world. Now, I'll give you the other ones because they're kind of out of the box, and maybe you'll get it. What else ended up being steam-powered in our country? What? Trains. So the Industrial Revolution transformed transportation with the building of railroads for steam-powered trains. So our railroad system came about because of the Industrial Revolution. So we have, number 1, the Industrial Revolution created more jobs, strengthening the country. The Industrial Revolution required less manual labor, which resulted in more production. The Industrial Revolution helps transform the United States into the wealthiest nation in the world. The Industrial Revolution transforms transportation by building railroads for steam-powered trains. Girls, what else did the Industrial Revolution do? Girls, provided jobs for women. You think this is going to break? Is that what you're laughing over? No. Women got out of the role of housewife and began to start being employed. Women went into the workforce. Okay? So that was another accomplishment. As the Industrial Revolution affected American women as some became members of the working force and broke away from the role of housewife. And the final one is the Industrial Revolution helped Americans make use of what that we had naturally in our country? Natural resources, such as forest, sea, and soil. Forest, sea, and soil. Okay? The Industrial Revolution helped Americans make use of natural sources such as forests, sea, and soil. Okay? Any questions on the Industrial Revolution? Well, now I'm going to tell you about the famous three new leaders in America that you'll hear about for quite a while now. The famous three new leaders in America. Who might one of them be, Will?
Here.
You probably did a report on him.
Oh yeah, John C. Calhoun.
John C. Calhoun. Very good. I just remember that report that saved your bacon this semester. John C. Calhoun, and a fine report it was, Will. Matter of fact, I'm thinking about just stepping in your desk and letting you tell everything about John C. Calhoun. Do you remember anything about him?
He was the vice president of, I forgot.
Okay, well, he's more detailed than that. He was a Republican from South Carolina. He was a Republican from South Carolina. He entered Congress in 1811 and favored the War of 1812. John C. Calhoun was a Republican from South Carolina. He entered Congress in 1811, and he was in favor of the War of 1812. He was also a lawyer. He favored state